Okay, so let me tell you something a little embarrassing. When I was maybe 19, 20 years old, I wanted my roommate to stop eating my food from the fridge. Like every single week, my stuff would just disappear. I left a note, didn't work. I talked to him, still didn't work. So one day, I just tried something completely different. I left a note that said, "Hey, please eat my leftovers. I don't want them. Help yourself." You know what happened? He stopped completely. Never touched my food again. And at the time, I had no idea why it worked. I just thought it was some weird coincidence. But years later, I learned there's actually a name for what I did. It's called reverse psychology. And it is one of the most powerful and honestly most underrated tools that exists in human communication. And here's what's wild. Most people think reverse psychology is just a trick, like something you use on kids. Fine, don't eat your vegetables. But that is maybe 1% of what this thing actually is. Today, I want to walk you through how reverse psychology actually works, why the human brain falls for it every single time, and probably most importantly, how to use it in real-life situations, whether that's relationships, work, getting people to actually listen to you, or even using it on yourself. Stick with me here. This one's going to change how you see people.
What reverse psychology actually is. All right, so first, let's just get clear on what we're actually talking about. Reverse psychology, at its core, is when you get someone to do what you want by telling them the opposite of what you want. Simple, right? But here's where it gets interesting. It's not just about saying the opposite thing. The reason it works has everything to do with something called reactance. Now, that's a psychology term, but I promise it's easy. Reactance is basically just this built-in human instinct to push back whenever someone tries to take away our freedom or our choices. Think about it this way. The moment someone tells you, you can't do that, or you have to do this, what happens inside you? Something just resists, right? Even if you were fine with doing the thing before, now suddenly you don't want to. Or if they tell you not to do something, now you kind of want to. That's reactance. That's the brain going, wait, who are you to tell me what to do? I make my own choices. And reverse psychology basically uses that instinct as the engine. When you tell someone they probably can't do something, or that they shouldn't bother, or that something isn't really for them, you're lighting a match next to that instinct. And most of the time, that instinct catches fire. This isn't manipulation in a dark way, by the way, and I'll get to the ethical side of this later because I think that's important. But at the base level, this is just how humans are wired. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Why your brain falls for it every time. Here's something I want you to really think about for a second. You've heard the phrase forbidden fruit. Like the moment something becomes off limits, it becomes more attractive. That's not just a saying. There's actual research behind why this happens. Back in 1981, a psychologist named Jack Bream, who actually coined the term reactance, did this study where he had people rate how much they liked certain objects. Then he told some of them that one of those objects was no longer available. And guess what happened? The moment it became unavailable, people rated it higher. They wanted it more. That's wild when you think about it. The object didn't change. The quality didn't change. The only thing that changed was that someone said, you can't have it. And this happens in every area of life. That's why if you tell a teenager you are not allowed to listen to that music, they will find a way to listen to that music. That's why if a boss micromanages every single task, employees start to feel suffocated and push back. That's why certain books that get banned become bestsellers overnight. The restriction creates the desire. The push creates the pull. And reverse psychology flips this on purpose. Instead of pushing someone towards something and creating resistance, you pull back. You say, you know what? Maybe this isn't for you. And the brain goes, wait, what? Why not? Let me prove you wrong. That's the whole mechanic. And it runs on autopilot in almost every human being. Where you've already seen this without knowing it. Here's where I want to show you how much this is already happening around you. Advertising. You've seen ads that say things like, this product is not for everyone, or only for people serious about results. That's reverse psychology. The second they tell you it's not for everyone, your brain wants to prove it's for you specifically. Sales. A really good salesperson, and I mean actually good, not the pushy type, will sometimes say, I'm not sure this is what you're looking for. And the buyer starts convincing the salesperson, which means the buyer starts convincing themselves. That's reverse psychology in a real-life setting. Parenting. This one's classic. You tell a kid, don't touch that button, you might as well have gift wrapped the button.
But if you say, that button is broken and super boring, it doesn't even do anything, now they might actually leave it alone.
Relationships. This one's a little more delicate. But how many times have you seen someone become way more interested in a person the moment that person seemed a little less available? That's not an accident. That's reactance playing out in real time. Once you start seeing these patterns, you realize this isn't some rare thing. This is everywhere, every single day. How to actually use it in real life. Okay, so this is the part I know you came for. Let's get into the real stuff. Getting someone to take your advice. This is probably the most common place people struggle. You have a friend, a family member, a coworker. You can clearly see they're making a bad decision. You try to tell them. They don't listen. You try harder. They dig in deeper. Here's what almost nobody does, but almost always works. Stop pushing. Actually say the opposite. Hey, you know what? I thought about it more. Maybe your way's fine. I could be wrong. Now what happens? The resistance has nothing to push against. And often, not always, but often, the person starts to reconsider on their own. Because now it's their choice. And humans will fight to protect a choice that feels external, but they'll genuinely consider a choice that feels like it came from inside them. Motivating someone who's checked out. You've probably dealt with someone, maybe a teammate, maybe your kid, maybe even yourself, who just has zero motivation to do something. And the more you try to pump them up, the more they seem to shut down. Try the low expectation approach. Not in a mean way, in a real, honest way. Look, this is tough. Most people don't actually stick with it. And that's okay. It's not for everyone. That statement, said genuinely, will do more than 100 motivational speeches. Because now the person isn't trying to do the thing for you. They're doing it to prove something to themselves, getting your point across in an argument. This might be the hardest one. When you're in a disagreement with someone and you really believe you're right, the instinct is to press harder, lay out more evidence, make the argument louder. And here's what that does to the other person's brain. The harder you push, the more their reactance kicks in, the more they dig into their position. Not because they think they're right. Sometimes they're not even sure. But because being pushed activates that nobody's going to tell me what to think response. The reverse psychology move? Acknowledge their side. Actually say, I can see why you'd see it that way. That alone drops their defenses. And when the defenses drop, the actual conversation can happen. Using it on yourself. Okay, this is the part that I honestly think is the most underrated application of all this. What if you used reverse psychology on your own brain? Here's the thing. Your brain has reactance too. You push yourself to do something and a part of you resists. You tell yourself you have to go to the gym, you have to clean the house, you have to start that project. And some part of you drags its feet every single time. So what if you tried the opposite? Instead of, I have to do this, try, I'm probably not going to do this today. It's fine. Sounds counterintuitive. But for a lot of people, that small shift removes the pressure. And when the pressure is gone, the resistance is gone. And sometimes, you actually just go do the thing. There's also a version of this for building habits. Instead of saying, I'm going to go to the gym every single day no matter what, which your brain hears as a restriction, try telling yourself, I'm just going to go once this week and see how I feel. The low bar doesn't make you lazy. For a lot of people, it actually makes starting easier. And starting is always the hardest part. The ethics of this, because it matters. All right, I want to be real with you for a second because I think this is important, and most videos on this topic skip right over it. Reverse psychology can be used to genuinely help people, or it can be used to manipulate people for your own gain, and there is a real difference. If you're using these techniques to help someone make a better decision, to encourage them, to get through to them when nothing else is working, that's one thing. If you're using this to control someone, to exploit their emotions, to get them to do something that benefits you and hurts them, that's a different thing entirely. The line is intent. And I think most of you already know which side of that line you're on when you're using a tactic like this. The version that actually builds trust over time is the kind where the other person, even if they never figure out what you did, ends up better off because of the interaction. They made a better choice. They felt more motivated. They felt heard in an argument. The version that destroys trust is when it becomes a game you play on people. Because people feel that eventually, even if they can't name it. So use this wisely. That's all I'll say. The deeper takeaway. Here's where I want to land this whole thing.
Most people spend their whole lives trying to push the world in the direction they want, push people to agree with them, push people to change, push themselves to do more. And most of that pushing creates friction, resistance, exhaustion. Reverse psychology, at its best, is the art of knowing when to stop pushing. It's about understanding that human beings are wired to want freedom, wired to resist control, wired to want things more when they feel like they came from a genuine place inside them, not because someone told them to. When you understand that, really understand it, you stop fighting that instinct in other people. You start working with it, and that changes everything. How you communicate, how you lead, how you parent, how you deal with yourself on the days when you can't get out of your own way. The most persuasive people in the world, the ones who seem to just naturally get others to listen, to change, to come around, they're not louder, they're not pushier. They've just figured out that sometimes the most powerful move is to let go of the wheel. All right, that's going to do it for today. If you made it this far, genuinely, thank you. This stuff took me years to actually start understanding, and I hope pulling it together like this saved you a little time. If this hit different for you, drop a comment below. Tell me one situation in your life where you think reverse psychology could have changed the outcome. I read every single one, and I genuinely love hearing how people connect this stuff to their real life. And if you want more videos breaking down how the human brain actually works, make sure you're subscribed. I put out a new one every week, and I promise I don't waste your time. See you in the next one.